Hey everyone, Brett Day here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Sigma 35mm F1.2 DG DN Art. Is this the best 35mm prime ever made? Well, let's talk about that. I just want to say a big thank you to Sigma USA for sending over this lens for this review. I also want to say that this is a completely independent review. I am not sponsored or paid by anyone, and all thoughts about this lens are my own. Now, I absolutely love 35mm primes, and I've been excited about the 35mm F1.2 Art ever since it was released. I recently reviewed the Sigma 35 F2 DG DN and highly recommended it. So why would you spend $850 more on the 35 1.2 Art? We'll cover that in a little while. First, let's take a look at the specs of this lens. The Sigma 35mm f1.2 DG DN Art features 17 elements in 12 groups with 11 rounded aperture blades. It has an aperture range from f1.2 to f16, and it has a minimum focusing distance of 11.8 inches or 30 centimeters. It takes 82mm filters, and the lens weighs a whopping 2.4 pounds or 1090 grams. This lens is available in both L mount and for Sony E mount cameras, and in the US it costs $1,499. Okay, so let's talk about ergonomics. There's no hiding the fact that the Sigma 35mm f1.2 DG DN Art is a beast of a lens. Here it is alongside my Sigma 24-70 f2.8 Art. Having said that, the Sigma 35mm f1.2 Art isn't as unwieldy as you'd imagine. It's front heavy on the Panasonic Lumix S5, but it's still manageable. If you're used to using bigger zooms, you'll have no complaints. The lens feels sturdy and solid, and that's exactly what we've come to expect from Art series lenses. Overall, the lens feels great in the hand. The all-metal barrel has a nice smooth finish and the controls are well laid out. The large aperture dial on the Sigma 35mm f1.2 is a nice touch. When you have click enabled, the dial slots into place nicely. My only complaint about it is that even when in click mode, the dial doesn't take much force to turn. You can always set the dial to AVO and you can control the aperture through the camera body. Enable declicked mode and the aperture dial spins smoothly, which videographers will love. The manual focus ring turns smoothly, but it does require a bit of force to turn. The throw is also quite large. This means you can focus precisely, but it will take a lot of turning to get where you need to be. The controls in the lens are well placed. Here you can see the autofocus lock button, which can be reassigned to anything you want, the auto to manual focus switch, and the click and declick switch. All of these controls make the lens much easier to use. Overall, the Sigma 35mm f1.2 is an exceptionally well built lens. It's fully weather sealed with a gasket at the mount and sealing throughout the lens body. This lens is as tough as they come. Let's talk about autofocus performance. In single focus mode, the 35mm f1.2 performs very well. It's not the fastest lens ever, there's a lot of glass to move here, but it's more than fast enough for most applications. It works well in both good and low light settings, with perhaps just a slight drop in speed in very low light situations. You'll have no problems with this lens though. When using continuous autofocus mode, you will see some pulsing, which really shouldn't surprise you at this point. If you're a stills photographer, this won't affect you though, and it will rarely cause you to miss a shot. I used this lens during a recent event in low light and had no problems tracking and capturing fast moving subjects. I was even able to nail eye focus on this performer while he was twirling. When it comes to video shooters though, you'll be better off manually focusing. The Sigma 35mm f1.2 DG DN is an easy lens to manually focus, but like a lot of lenses these days, there is some focus breathing to deal with. Now, it's not as bad as the Sigma 35mm f2, but it's still something you need to be aware of, especially if you're going to use it to make videos. Overall though, I've been really impressed with how well this lens performs when it comes to focusing. Right, on to image quality. Now don't be shocked when I say that the optics in this lens are top quality, because that's exactly what they are. Images are ridiculously sharp right off the bat at f1.2 with a minimal loss of sharpness in the corners. There's only a slight vignette when shooting wide open too. Stop down to f2 and you'll have corner to corner sharpness and the vignette disappears. It's seriously impressive. You can shoot down to f14 with no loss in quality. Past that, diffraction will start to rear its head. Keep in-camera corrections turned on and there are no barrel distortions to worry about. However, if you disable profile corrections, you will see some barrel distortion that will affect the edges of the frame. It's not the worst I've ever seen, but it's worth making note of. This lens also suffers from flares when shooting directly into light sources. This halo effect is pretty bad, so keep this in mind when you're out shooting. Sigma done a great job controlling chromatic aberrations with this lens as well, and I've only seen green fringing one time since using this lens. This can easily be removed in post though. Another highlight of this lens from Sigma is its color reproduction. This lens produces some of the best colors I have ever seen from a Sigma lens, and I think most photographers who use it will be very pleased. The colors are nice and vibrant without being too overly saturated, and they render nice and neutrally too. The colors are just beautiful. Okay, let's talk about bokeh here for a few moments. The Sigma 35mm F1.2 produces the type of bokeh you would expect from a lens with an aperture this fast. It's smooth, it's creamy, it's dreamy, it's everything you could want. Bokeh balls are nice, although not perfectly round, but they still look fantastic. If you do any type of photography that requires subject separation such as portrait photography or product photography, this lens will be fantastic for you. Okay, so we've seen the good and the bad of the Sigma 35mm F1.2 DG DN Art. Now, should you buy it, and why should you buy it over other 35mm primes? If you're a professional event, portrait or wedding photographer, the Sigma 35mm F1.2 Art is a solid choice. This lens is built like a tank. Autofocus is good, image quality, apart from some weird flaring, is exceptional, and the bokeh and colors rendered are beautiful. Now, if you're a street photographer or are a photographer who wants a lens that will be even better autofocus and won't be a burden to lug around all day, I'd suggest looking at the Sigma 35mm F2 DG DN. I have reviewed it, it's incredibly good and it costs just $649. You could also look at the new Sigma 35mm F1.4 DG DN Art. I haven't talked about this lens yet because I haven't reviewed it yet. Overall though, the Sigma 35mm F1.2 DG DN Art is an exceptional lens and you'll absolutely love it if you add it to your collection. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you have, please consider hitting the like button down below, and if you'd like to see more lens reviews and more content in the future, please also hit the subscribe button too. Until next time, take care.